All right. Good morning. How are we all doing? Great. Are we happy? Those of us that have turned in our projects, are we happy to have them gone? Yes. And for those of us that have not turned in our projects, remember 5 p.m. today. Thank you to everyone who has already submitted a digital project. That's really helpful. Don't worry if you have not submitted your digital project today. The deadline is actually 5 p.m. There's no extra points for submitting it early. You're fine. So, awesome. That's all good. A couple of quick announcements. Remember that next week we will be in Chatham. So I'll send you information about that, but we'll be starting at 9 as usual, but we'll be starting at the Chatham County Cooperative Extension. You are about to see it's called the Taj Mahal of agriculture. It's a very nice building. And then for the second part of class, we will be out at Debbie Ruse's Pollinator Paradise Garden. Debbie knows that she has basically the amount of our class time, but if you need to leave early because it is like an hour drive, I totally understand. You can just dip out of Debbie's tour a little bit early. So just manage your time as usual, do what you need to do to have it make sense for you. I will send in our follow-up email today a couple of places in the area that you might want to check out if you're interested. Just because Country Farm and Home is there, Rachel's Plant Nursery is there. There's a couple of places that I wouldn't recommend publicly, but just among us friends are kind of rad. So if you want to do a day in Chatham, that could be fun. Does that all sound good to everyone?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so today's class, you guys are the first time ever we are giving this class. Woo! So what we realized is that we used to give you 16 weeks of horticulture education, and we filled you up with all these anxieties about not knowing enough about gardening, and then we sent you out into the world. And we realized it was probably actually really helpful to explain to you a little bit more about cooperative extension, a little bit more about volunteering, about what this is actually going to look like. So for today's class, we're going to have kind of a short lecture at the beginning from me where I kind of orient you to cooperative extension more broadly, to Durham, to what we're doing here. And then we're actually going to have a panel discussion with 3 experienced master gardeners, and we have some questions prepared, but we'll hopefully have some time for your questions as well. They're all experts and kind of rock stars, which is fun. We'll be having a slightly shorter break today, probably 20 minutes instead of 30. And then we'll be doing some activities at the end where you get to kind of practice your volunteering skills. So, yeah, it'll be great. We might have roving bands of client master gardeners with different personalities to ask you questions in different ways. Full disclosure, before I was ever in this position, I menaced the master gardeners one time, and I think back on this experience all the time and just feel bad because I had gotten really interested in self-incompatibility in plants, and I saw some 4 sweet master gardeners at the farmer's market, and I was like, what do you know about self-incompatibility in plants? And they were like, why? Why are you doing this to us? I think back, I'm like, oh, that was so unfair. So anyway, there are us jokesters in the group, but in general, everyone's really well-intentioned. So we'll give you a little bit of orientation to that. So is that, feeling it? Awesome. It's hard not to feel good on a day like this. Spring is springing. Okay. So today for our first section, again, we'll be covering a little bit of a reminder about what our mission is, what are we doing here, our place in extension more broadly, our place in Durham, and a little bit of an overview of how we do what we do, how we volunteer, and how we kind of meet people where they are. So some of these slides you've seen before, right? You saw this at your orientation, right? When you got your packet to apply. This is our mission. It's all about connecting people to horticulture through science-based education and outreach, right? It's this first part that's so essential, right? We're science-based and we're education and outreach. That's really what we're doing. We're trying to help people. We're trying to get the resources of the land-grant universities and other sources of knowledge out to people in a way that's really useful. You come to this building all the time and you're like, this is cooperative extension, but we're part of a much larger network. We are part of a nationwide network of researchers, educators, volunteers, right? So we have specialists at NC State, We have people like me in the counties, we have volunteers, we have everyone kind of working together to research information and then get it out. Here in Durham County, we're a partnership between North Carolina State University, NC A&T, and Durham County. I'll be honest, the way the North Carolina system works, it tends to be that many positions are being funded through NC State, and some positions are being funded through A&T. In this office, we actually only have, I think, one, maybe 1.5 positions that receive funding from A&T. This is because NC State and A&T have slightly different missions. NC State has the historic land grant mission. A&T, like many of the historically black land grant universities, which you find in the Southeast, was founded because NC State was not accepting black students. And this was a second round in the 1890s where they founded all of these universities, because basically what happened was Congress said to the Southeast land grants, hey, you have to either form black land grants or you need to start accepting black students. Like, you have to do one of those. And the South, being the South, was like, we're going to form second institutions, right? And to be totally frank, and I'll send you a follow-up article on this where you can read about the history of this, these black land grants have never been funded at appropriate rates. They've never been funded the way that the state, like that the former ones have, and it's a real problem. And so oftentimes they have more limited missions. And here in North Carolina, the focus of A&T is really to work with historically underserved populations and urban populations. That's where they've focused. And so you'll see them kind of across the counties, but broadly, you don't see the same amount of money going into like a county cooperative extension office from A&T as you do from NC State. And that's just because they don't get the resources to be able to do that, which is messed up, but true. So you might remember this. This is one of the cool things we get access to throughout what we're doing here, right, is that we get access to the soil lab. We get access to all these cool resources. We get to go see things at NC State. We do tours of A&T. We get to do all these things, and it's really cool just because we're part of this larger network. And it's one of the real perks of being a Master Gardener. So for the Master Gardener program itself, the Master Gardener program actually started over 40 years ago in Washington State in the Tacoma area. It was a poor, hapless horticulture agent who was like, I'm getting too many calls. They keep calling me. And so he trained up a whole bunch of volunteers to help with a call line, essentially. And from there, it spread very, very quickly. It's been in North Carolina for just shy of as many years as it existed. There's some debate about where it first started. It's Wake or another county, I forget which, because one county had a call line first and one county called itself a Master Gardener call line first. So there's a little bit of a turf war there. But it's this really kind of old program. And what's kind of cool about it is actually Extension had a phase where it was doing these master programs, right? So there was Master Foods, which we have here in Durham County. There's Master Naturalist, which we're trying to restart here in Durham County. But I think there were some like wild ones too. Like there might have been like Master Energy Saver is one I've heard of, right? Because there were all these like oil embargoes and that kind of stuff going on at the time. And so Master Water Conservation, there were all these master programs, but Master Gardener was really the one that really took off the most and kind of had the strongest foothold. In North Carolina, we are a program of just NC State. So, and this is an important thing to understand, is that cooperative extension, you'll see, is a partnership between NC State and A&T, but that there are still NC State programs and A&T programs, and there are programs then that they collaborate on. And so while we do try really hard to partner with our A&T, like we always have them at the plant festival, we go do tours, we try to stay in touch with their specialists, all of our funding and all of our support actually directly comes from NC State. And that's an important thing to understand, just because a lot of times people will be like, why don't we work with A&T even more? And part of that for us is that we want to be really, really cognizant about the fact that like we are not actually directly part of their mission, and we don't want to over ask from them. We want to make sure that we're providing as much value to them as they're providing us, right, in terms of supporting their programming. So we try to make sure we have a really, really reciprocal partnership with them, and NC State is the one that we go to more where we're like, hey, we want stuff, right? That's who we hit up for that.
Is there an A&T extension?
There is, yes, there is, yes. This is so weird. Okay, this is wild. So there's NC State, there's A&T. There's NC State Extension. There's A&T Extension. There's North Carolina Cooperative Extension, which is the thing that then creates this logo, this red and blue logo, right? Because it's Aggie blue and Wolfpack red. When you see a logo that is just red, that's a NC State, right? And so, yeah, and then because Durham County's got to get in on it, they're like, yeah, our logo too. Anytime you feel an impulse to put a logo on something, email me. There's weird rules and people have a lot of feelings about it, okay? So I would love to talk to you about that. But yes, there is absolutely, and you'll see that in a lot of different places. They do things more like, they do FNEP, the Expanded Food Nutrition Education Program. They do some of that sort of nutrition education a little bit more, whereas NC State does some of this other stuff more. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
So at some point the extensions were segregated.
Yes.
Like there were black extensions and there were like the black extension like office or like, and then for like whites. And A&T and NC State, like that's how they were sort of separated. But like, isn't there like an extension just for that county?
So yeah.
NC State that A&T is in, so that like it's not any longer like a segregated extension offices, but now it's just per like county.
Right. So I think, let me clarify a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And tell me if this doesn't answer your question. So NC State was formed as the land grant. It didn't accept basically anyone who was not a white man. Like they were just not into that. A&T was then formed in 1890 to accept predominantly black men. Both of them later start accepting women, but like at later dates. And so that happens, and then in the early 1900s, I think the 1910s, I wish I knew this year off the top of my head, cooperative extension itself is created by another act of Congress. And the reason they do that is because the acts of Congress have created these land grant institutions, but they have not created a way to get that information out to people, so they create the cooperative extension service. A lot of the cooperative extension service was actually really modeled off of like what George Washington Carver was doing, because he was doing basically cooperative extension before we had cooperative extension. It was really cool. He had these like, him and other people kind of in his like scene had these like crazy Jessup wagons where they'd like roll out to farms and be like, better farming, right? And it was really impressive. So anyway, you have this act of Congress then in the early 1900s that creates cooperative extension. And when those county cooperative extensions are formed, to the best of my understanding, they are integrated. Something that was formed in the early 1900s across America was probably not truly integrated, right? It was not providing services fairly. And so that persists for a while, and over time it gets more and more integrated to the point where actually Durham County is the first county cooperative extension in the nation to have a black director. Wow. There's a sign for him outside. Yeah, you know, it's actually pretty rad. And so I would say it's getting better and better over time, but does that answer your question a little bit? It's kind of weird though. You know, and I think that cooperative extension itself, when it was formed, it was not formed to be segregated. The land grants were formed as segregated institutions. But I would have a hard time saying that any institution created at that time was probably not operating in a de facto segregated fashion, where it was not providing services fairly to different people.
Does every county in North Carolina have an extension program?
We do. Actually, North Carolina Cooperative Extension is one of the stronger cooperative extensions in the country. So we have an office in every county, and in some cases you will have shared agents. So like Person and Granville share an agent, but they have an office in both counties and they spend time between those two offices. We have an office in every county, and we have an office in the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. So we have 100 counties in North Carolina, but actually 101 offices. If you look out at the western part of the country, they work often more on like a regional model where you have much larger counties and you might have someone covering much larger swaths of land. But here in North Carolina, we have a really heavy, well-funded presence. Yeah.
It was like 1914.
Thank you, 1914. I was gonna say 19, I was 14, 19, but yeah, so cooperative extensions created in 1914. So as a program of NC State, we get actually a lot of resources from NC State, and this is important to understand. This is, two of the major things we get are we get a state extension specialist, Lucy Bradley. Dr. Lucy Bradley runs the consumer horticulture program across the state, right? So she oversees everything. She's the one who like got the idea to make the to make the North Carolina Extension Gardener handbook. She was excited about creating the toolbox, right? So she oversees kind of those larger programming goals, and one of the people she manages is Charlotte Glenn. Charlotte Glenn is phenomenal. She's our state coordinator. So she kind of wrangles all of us cats on a state level. She has worked as an extension agent for I think it's 17 years prior to becoming the state coordinator. She is an excellent horticulturalist. She has a doctorate in public garden administration, and she wrote her thesis on like motivations in the Master Gardener program. She's invested, right? She does a really, really great job. And part of like what she does that's so amazing, and she balances like, you think we have a lot of personalities in this room? Statewide, there's a lot of personalities, right? And Charlotte's pretty good at managing all of that. State support also includes things like the intranet, the textbook, plants, pests, and pathogens, Master Gardener College, which is a seminar we hold every other year, putting together all these state level resources, right? So we get a lot from them.
I have a weird little question.
Yeah.
So like, sorry.
No, you're good.
So occasionally I'll like attend something at J.C. Ralston Arboretum.
Yeah.
There's a little checkbox, excuse me, that asks, are you affiliated with NC State?
Yeah.
So now
You are.
Check that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I didn't know
affiliated.
if I had to have like a email address that had like.
No, I'd say you're affiliated.
Okay.
As a volunteer, I would say you are.
Cool.
And so statewide, this is what it looks like, right? Statewide, every place where you see red, we have a Master Gardener program. We don't actually have a Master Gardener program in every county in the state, but we have it in most, over 75 counties. We have about 4,000 volunteers statewide, probably slightly more than that now. So that's part of the fun of like Master Gardener College or Plants, Pests, and Pathogens. So you get onto these things and you see all the other people too, right? And we have expertise kind of all across the state, which is really fun.
Do you have to live in the county that you become a Master Gardener in?
Not in most counties.
Okay.
In Durham, we do request it.
Okay.
So you'll find that to be more prevalent in counties with a lot of interest in their programs.
Yeah, I just wondered, like, if you live in a county that doesn't have a program, do they have access?
Certainly you could go, yeah, you could go to a neighboring county. And that's part of like what's helpful to know is that, so here in Durham County, with the addition of you guys, we have about 160 Master Gardeners. We are in the top 5 programs in the state by both number of volunteers, number of contacts, and number of hours, right? We are by far one of the largest, most well-resourced programs in the state. There are many other Master Gardener programs where they might have 20 to 30 people in the program. A training class might be 5 people, and they're like trying to find them, right? Like the agent has to go out and like beat the bushes, right, to like find someone and kind of like hope they wander in a little bit confused. And then we win them over. But so some of the, where you tend to have the larger programs are the urban counties, right? So you have large programs in Durham, you have a large program in Forsyth, because you have Winston-Salem, in Mecklenburg, because you have Charlotte, New Brunswick's large, Wake's large, right? So this is kind of how it goes, Trish.
Actually, if you move to a different county, is it possible to get established in that program there, or do you have to go through their training again?
It's at the discretion of the agent, but typically the way it works is that you say, I want to be a Master Gardener, I'm already a certified Master Gardener in good standing. That agent then shoots me an email and I'm like, yeah, they're cool, and you're fine. And they might ask you to retake 1 or 2 classes. Like if you move from Pamlico County here, I'm gonna be like, you're taking soils. But other than that, I'd be like, you're fine, yeah.
If somebody wants to be a Master Gardener and they live in Durham County, but our program's every other year,
Mm-hmm.
could they possibly go to Chatham or Orange and get their certification there, and then come into Durham and volunteer?
They could technically. I would say it's not worth doing though, because part of the thing about training that we really notice is that people who come in as transfers, if they don't go through training, they don't get a cohort. They don't get the group, right? And so they don't come in quite the same way because they don't have the relationships. And that can work, but I haven't seen the same level of integration into the broader program for people who come in as one-offs as people who come in a group. But yeah, technically you could. This is a map of the land-grant colleges kind of across the United States. You'll see the 1862s are the ones that are formed by the first act of Congress. The 1890s with the white star are the ones that are formed by the second act of Congress. Those are, yeah, they're referred to as our 1890s. They're the historically black ones predominantly. And so, for example, we're hosting in this office the National Urban Extension League Southeast meeting, conference this May. And that Southeast conference also includes the 1890s because most 1890s are Southeast, but we also want to make sure we pull in all the rest of the 1890s to get everyone kind of together to party. You also have this later act in 1994 that creates a whole bunch of additional ones, but predominantly most of them are coming out of 1862 and 1890. And so most of these places where you see a land-grant institution, you will have the Master Gardener program. It can just look very different in every state. States are allowed to form how they want to, and so in some states they do what we do, but we actually also have one of the most intense Master Gardener programs in the country. Whereas in other states, it's more like they're training volunteers to then go volunteer for other groups, right? So there's not kind of the ongoing relationship as much.
With the 94 ones, were those mostly Native American colleges, it looks like?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you this follow-up article. I mean, this whole thing is a sordid mess, actually, how these were founded, how land grant, okay?
Concept, yeah.
The whole concept of land grant is messed up because you were giving away land. As we all know, there was actually not a lot of land to give away. There was land you could steal and act like you were giving away, right? And so, however this happens, it's a mess, but it's what we have now, and it's kind of the legacy of what we have now. So across the country, you have at least 85,000 Master Gardeners. The Master Gardeners are also present, I believe, in Canada, England, and I think South Korea. So technically, when we have the Master Gardener Conference, it's the International Master Gardener Conference, which is fun. Yeah. Yes.
How do we address we have grow food,
Yeah.
improve physical, mental health, and address environmental issues
Yeah.
in this mission? How is that done?
Okay, growing food is things like Briggs, right? So a lot of extensions do a lot of that kind of work where they're growing food and they're donating it, giving it to either plot owners or whoever else. There's a whole bunch of different programs you'll see like that. Physical and mental health, that's kind of the broader research we know around gardening and horticulture and kind of physical activity associated with gardening. So there's a lot of therapeutic horticulture work going on now as well. This is kind of a new thing that Extension is getting really, really into, where it's both therapeutic for people who might have, therapeutic horticulture covers any number of things. So it might be physical limitations, it might be mental trouble that people are trying to work through, any number of different things. So there's a lot of training on that. And addressing environmental issues. I don't know how many times I've yelled at you guys to be cool about weeds and read the label on pesticide containers. But that's actually really what we're doing, right? I mean, you can think about this as gardening, but part of what really motivates me about this work is when we think about who actually controls so much of the land, especially in urban centers, a lot of it is actually controlled by residences, and what we're doing on our individual properties really actually can matter. And so if we're giving good environmentally friendly advice, right, the moment I can convince you to apply, first pass a little bit less fertilizer to your lawn, turn some of your lawn into flower beds, right, turn some of those flower beds into native pollinator beds, right, that's actually a huge environmental impact. Yeah.
Ashley.
Yeah.
Can I put the plug for therapeutic horticulture?
Yeah, do it.
So, if you are ever curious about it, please come and talk to me. I did it a couple years ago with the Botanical Gardens.
Yeah.
And, Emily Weaver is still teaching the program, and she's also the director of therapeutic horticulture there. with NC State Extension, it's Amy Brew-Kesey,
Yeah.
who's also near and dear to my sweetheart, and she is amazing. So if anyone is ever interested in doing that with whatever population you guys are looking at, it's like they have a hybrid where you go
What's the
for
program again?
Therapeutic horticulture.
Gotcha.
So you get the certificate with the Botanical Gardens. They have a hybrid which meets once a month on site, and they go everywhere. It's fantastic. And then you do online components, and they have a direct, just online component as well. So you could do it either way, and it's really great for like all target populations. So if you ever have any questions about it, or go check them out. It's also on the Botanical website. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. And NC State's really investing heavily in this at this point, and so there's a lot more resources, there's a lot more support. We do not have a therapeutic horticulture committee in Durham yet. Think about it. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's switch to a little bit. That's what we get from NC State. That's what we get from the land grants. What do we get from Durham, right? This is actually roughly where you guys are sitting. This building was built in the 1940s actually to house an open air market, like a farmer's market, and then it was redivided basically into offices more recently than that, probably 30 years ago. And so those windows used to open, all this cool stuff, right? So this has been the agriculture building since the 40s when it was built. It's always been that. And so this is what Durham County provides, right? They provide like more than half of my salary. There's actually only probably 5 people in this building that get half of their salary from NC State. Almost everyone else is provided entirely by Durham County, right? They are providing our annual ag budget. They're providing space, staff, everything. I am the ag team lead, so which sounds fancy, basically just means I harass people for budget stuff. And so we have on our team Panna, myself, John Litter, our small farms and local foods agent, and 1/5 of Alex Kissinger, who is our livestock agent for Durham and Orange County. And we get annual operating expenses that are not a lot, but they're enough that we can kind of provide additional funding to the Master Gardener program. And one of the really great things about here in Durham County is that they help us set the unique tone of our program. So NC State has its own goals, NC State has its things it needs to do, but it understands that the partnership with the counties are providing so much. And there's a saying in Extension that is, you dance with the person that brought you. And so NC State will say something, and then if Durham County says, no, we don't like that, a lot of times NC State will look the other direction. And that's really, really helpful, because especially when we're in a moment like now, where things are getting weird because NC State has to be fearful of a Republican legislature, Durham County has county support that wants to stay the course on doing good work. And so there's an ability to kind of find a compromise a lot of the time, and we're able to keep doing a lot of things that we really value because we're in Durham County. So we have a huge thanks to our county leadership for that. And I'm not going to say any of that in more specific terms. So some of the other things that happen at our office, just so you have an orientation, this is really helpful for you to know, because you might go out and you might talk to people and they don't have gardening questions. So it's helpful to know what else is going on in this office so that you can at least say, like, yeah, Extension does that too. And Extension does a lot of things. Most offices just have ag, 4-H, FCS. We have so much beyond that, and you're going to see that. So FCS and food security, so family and consumer sciences, that's Cheryl and Barry. They do all ages food and nutrition support. The expanded food and nutrition education program, FNET, we offer that in both English and Spanish. That's provided through predominantly, I think, A&T funding. They work with Durham Housing Authority and other groups to support community gardens, right? So they're putting in community gardens all the time. Obviously, Briggs Avenue Community Garden, where you have both plot owners and a lot of food being donated. So there's nutrition education, there's the Master Foods program, there's all of these things coming out of that. So if you want to know how to cook or eat, they can help you with that, right? Overall, it's a seed to table approach, which is really Sherilyn's strength. For youth programming, in this office we have kids voting, which is super cool. They put out a candidate guide. Over 1,000 kids voted in 2022, and it was a statewide program in 2024. So this is all about, they go out into everywhere from elementaries to high schools, and they just get kids excited about voting, right? They do civic engagement, they stage mock elections for the kids. This was such a popular program in Durham that statewide, again, it was picked up as a program that a lot of offices did with us as a model. 4-H, you might have been familiar with this as a kid or for your own kids. They do year-round clubs, summer camps, including farm to fork, coding camp, residential camps. You know, they're about to get a bunch of chicks in the office, and then they're going to give the chicks out to kids, and they raise them up for the Feather Classic, right? So this is kind of like, because we're in Durham, it's everything from chicks to coding, right? It's all of that, and we're able to manage all that, which is really cool. For family support, we have Welcome Baby. Welcome Baby takes up basically the entire back half of our office. They're a huge program. They were originally an independent program, but when they needed a home, a director decades ago now took them in, and they've become kind of an essential part of what we do. They do Giving Closet, where they give out clothes to families, formula and coat drives, parent education, car seat classes. The parent education is really cool. They've started offering additional things where they do, for example, father support groups, where it's like all the dads get together and talk about how hard it is to be a dad, which I can only imagine. And I think there's a lot of emotional support that goes on there as well, because it's people sharing their stories with each other, which is really helpful. I know that there was one dad in one of their first classes who said, like, I've never been able to share any of this with anyone. You know, and the teachers were like, 9 in your life? He's like, no. Right? So it's this sort of thing where everyone's able to talk, and so they're able to learn from each other about what they're doing. And all resources are provided in English and Spanish. Community outreach. They do a lot of different programs, but kind of their flagship program is the Parent and Family Advocacy and Support Training, PFAST, and then Latino PFAST, LPFAST, and these are all about learning to navigate the Durham schools. So what's going on with Durham Public Schools? How do you make the most of what you have? How do you get resources for your kids? All of these programs are free to nearly free, right? All of these are provided for the community. Anyone can attend them. For agriculture, we have small farms and local foods in addition to, you guys are actually part of the agriculture program.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is PFAS still being offered?
Yes.
How often?
I don't know, to be totally honest, but frequently
Because
enough I hear about it.
That's the program that I got
That you got
involved
into, yeah.
with this office over 20 years ago. And now when I tell people about PFAS, and they're like, I don't think that it is being offered, or
It's
not
definitely
often, and
I think it's being offered as much as it can be, but it's still offered at a regular clip, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe 2 years ago now, we got funding from the county to buy a 129-acre parcel in the north part of Durham, actually just up 15501. That is going to be the future farm campus. They're currently going through feasibility studies and everything for that plot, but it's going to be a combination incubator farm, so where farmers can go and lease small amounts of land, ½ acre to an acre, to learn how to farm with shared resources. There will be commercial kitchens, there will be all sorts of other stuff there to kind of really have a real resource for the farming community, and especially for small farms, because that's what we are in Durham. Like, we've never been big farms, but the farms are getting smaller and smaller, but they're getting higher and higher productivity, right? So these are people who are growing for farmers markets and that kind of stuff. And so that's a huge amount of work that is never ending. One of the cool things about that plot of land too is that a lot of it is going to be put into conservation with our partners at County Green Space. And so a lot of it will go into trails and that kind of stuff as well. So the good field part of it will go into farm production, and the forest and the kind of river areas of it will go into conservation for residents of Durham County to use.
Where's this at?
It is just north of here, probably about 20 minutes on 15.5, like just off 15.501 off of Orange Factory Road, yeah. Yeah. It's not far. And then one of the really cool things about our office is we actually have a number of county program coordinators in our office. So if you want to think big picture, we have those people in our office. So we have the county food security coordinator, who works across all sorts of different food banks, food pantries, kind of coordinating funding, coordinating food security resources. The immigrant and refugee affairs coordinator, Nayo, he's awesome. Nayo works with all these populations to make sure they have what they need and to kind of get folks where they need to be headed in terms of resources. And then the early childhood services coordinator. So she works on 0 to 5 and helps with things like book harvest and other things to make sure that the youngest among us have what they need. So that's a little bit of what we have in our county. It's a lot. Just remember that there's a lot of stuff here, and in general, the answer, if someone's like, can cooperative extension help? You're like, probably, right? Probably. Like, we at least know the person who can get you where you're going, right? Because we have such a huge office. We have over 30 staff. We're huge at this point for cooperative extension. Yeah.
If we were out at a public event and someone asked us a question about something that we're like, oh, I think maybe that is somewhere under the umbrella of extension.
Yeah.
What is the if I had my phone,
Yeah.
like, is there a place that I could be like, refresh my memory on all these things that you just told us and point them towards something?
Yes, I will. So the place to go for all of this, and you might not have seen this yet because you've been going someplace else, is our county website. There is a Meet Our Staff button that you can find everyone, but also everything is here. This is the general formula for all cooperative extension websites in North Carolina, the county.cooperativeextensionservice.ncsu.edu, right? So Chatham, Wake, Orange, whatever it might be. You can find all of that here. Yeah. We have an upcoming report to the community where you can meet a lot of these people in person too. Yeah.
They also have a really great newsletter. It's one of my favorites.
We have a good newsletter.
You can see all of the different activities that are going on in the office. So it's a
Yeah, I'll include a link to sign up for our newsletter as well. Yeah. Yes.
You said that our county office was very well staffed at 30.
Yes.
So what does what do more of the lower staff, how much does that vary?
4 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like standard.
Yeah.
Huge.
So a lot of times you'll have a director, an FCS agent, an ag agent, some other Aggie type agent, a 4-H agent, and maybe an admin. That's pretty common. Yeah.
You have a video bio on the site.
It's brutal. But so okay, so that's extension, and then we also have this really interesting thing where a lot of Master Gardener programs have what we call associations, and these are independent 501c3s that are tightly partnered with the Master Gardener program in a county, and they provide basically the financial end of it. It's very hard for us to take money and disperse money into county accounts. It's like a train wreck, right? And so we have an association that is an independent 501c3 that, for example, you might have noticed, our plant sale is actually presented by the Friends of Durham County Extension Master Gardeners, right? It's presented technically by our association. The money goes into association accounts and then is dispersed that way. And you'll hear from our association chair, Laura, at the last day of class. It operates under an agreement with NC State to support our program. And it supports our annual plant sale and disbursement of all Master Gardener funds, which is really essential. And at our plant sales, we are averaging about $17,000 a year gross, and that's enough to run our program for the year. And so the association is this thing that you'll hear referred to. It's technically independent from us. It exists only as a board. It's like 3 to 4 people at any given time that are Master Gardener volunteers who sign up to operate on this board. In a perfect world, they meet like twice a year. The IRS requires you to meet at least once a year. That's why that number is there. And they do the really glamorous tasks of bookkeeping and making sure we have insurance for certain events and that kind of stuff, which doesn't sound fun, but without this ability to have an easy access bank account, a lot of this doesn't work, right? So it's not glamorous work, but it's really core to what we're doing. And so it's really all of these groups working together, right? The NC State, the land grants, the county, the association working together that allow us to do what we do. All right, switching tactics a little bit. That's who we are. That's how we do this. What's Durham, right? So Durham is a really fascinating place. And I know some of us are new here, some of us were born here, right? So sorry if this is old hat to you, but I think it's a really helpful orientation to think about. So we have the city of Durham, right, which is covering kind of this sort of area. Durham does exist in the northern part of the county. I know some of us live there, but some of us have to be reminded that Bahama and Rougemont are real. Predominantly our population is in the city limits, but there certainly are populations in the northern part of the county. If you just want to go for a beautiful drive and you haven't done it recently, I would recommend doing that. Durham is really kind of an interesting mix because we have a pretty good age distribution, but we do have a lot of folks in that 25 to 44 block. And then one of the things that's really interesting about Durham is that we have a really, really, really distributed kind of diverse population, which is really nice. I grew up in a north suburb of Indianapolis, Indiana. I did not grow up someplace like Durham, and so when I moved to Durham, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna stay here. It's super cool, because there's so many different people, so many different perspectives, so many different ideas. And importantly, we do have a 14% Hispanic or Latino population, which puts us over the 10% threshold for Spanish speakers. That mean we do need a lot of our resources to be translated when at all possible. We do have an in-house translator, and we can also contract out those services as necessary. We don't have as many things translated as I would like. If you want a document translated, talk to me. We can probably get it translated. So I'm going to be moving a little bit quickly to keep us on track, but I like the questions. So you guys have already started doing this, but I really do want to impress this upon you, is that when we think about recording our effort and working with all these people, it's essential that we think about both hours and contacts. So we think about hours because hours are a requirement, right? You're like, I'm putting my hours down because I'm trying to get my 40 hours. 100% that's true. But hours show our time, and contacts really help show our impact, right? Contacts show the number of people you're actually interacting with. Remember, we are education and outreach. That's what we're doing. We're doing education and outreach, and contacts show you how to do that. Contacts is really kind of done a disservice as being this tiny non-essential box on the hours reporting form, but like it's there, it's real. Please fill it out. Think of your contacts. A contact is each person you share research-based gardening information with while volunteering, and actually each person you share information about extension programs with. So if I talk to you about tomatoes, or if I talk to you about Welcome Baby, those are both contacts. If I talk to you about the weather, unless it's about tomatoes, maybe not a contact, right? But research-based gardening information or about extension programming, multiple master gardeners can count the same contact. So if Jules and I are volunteering and we're both talking to Kevin, and Jules is like, tomatoes can be determinate or indeterminate. And I'm like, determinate means that they print all their fruit out at once. We both count that as a contact. It is about the information shared, not the person receiving the information, which sounds crazy. But it's about you, it's not about them, okay?
So,
yeah.
Just in our everyday lives, when you start talking about to people and say you're in the Master Gardener program, they start asking you questions about gardening. Can we count those as contacts if it's only during the volunteering?
Yeah, it's during those volunteering hours. Like if you put hours, you put contacts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
If you do something like write for the blog, how are those?
Blog and social media, talk to me.
Okay.
They're their own special thing. But we got you. But we got you. And it doesn't include other master gardeners or extension staff, right? So if you guys are just standing there volunteering, wildly sharing tomato facts, that doesn't happen. Okay? Yeah. But do you think they're contacts? Your contacts can be counted either on a tally, they can be counted with a clicker if you like that, they can also be estimated. Right? So if you get done and you're like, oh my god, I forgot my contacts, but I think I talked to like 25 people. Put 25, okay? You can estimate these. And so thinking a little bit about how we reach people, and this is something I like to think about because you guys are about to embark on learning about all the committees, trying all the different things. And it's helpful to remember that we do kind of both direct volunteer work where you are actually engaging with the public, where you're doing that education and outreach, and then we do support work, right? Because, for example, to have a public event that is staffed correctly and has its things and people show up at the right time and blah, 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 a lot of support work had to happen. But also you need someone to stand there and share the information, right? And so the support work is essential, but the support work is in service of the education and outreach. So some of our direct committees include things like public events, office duty, speakers bureau, social media and blog, youth programs, and the plant festival and pollinator census, which you'll learn about later in the year. These are things where you're actually going to be out talking to people, and that's really great. Some of our support committees include advisory, initial training, for example, social committee, everyone likes snacks, newsletter, field trips, photography and plant sale. You'll see most of our photos have been taken by Allie Mullen. She is the chair of our photography committee. She wants to teach you how to take photos. And plant sale is support because even though you're talking to people, the major goal there is actually fundraising, right? That's why we have the plant festival as well, is we've created a whole educational event to kind of mirror that, to make sure we still have an emphasis on education. Advisory is this really interesting special committee because it oversees the budgeting for all other committees, provides support for all their committees, makes sure things are going well with them. Think of it as like the head committee, right? And we'll hear from the chair of advisory at the end of class on, or at the final class on May 1st. And finally, we have these two groups that are kind of somewhere in between. So Demo Garden and Briggs, where we're both maintaining spaces that are educational resources, but also doing teaching in those spaces. And Partnerships in Gardening, which is all about figuring out kind of how do we make partnerships across Durham and how do we help, or how do we work with as many people as possible from all different communities in gardening. Yeah.
What is the relationship with like the farmer's market, the cooperative?
So public events has a Master Gardener table at the farmer's market once a month, has a table at most farmers markets once a month across. That's kind of our major relationship, but like, for example, during COVID when everything was hitting the fan, we would also, like bigger cooperative extension, like ag, like my position, would have meetings with farmers market managers and that kind of stuff to provide direct support for them. So in kind of normal times, it's more like Master Gardeners are out there tabling, spreading the good word of gardening. But during harder times, the extension becomes kind of a clearinghouse for information and bringing people together.
But you don't have relationships with the individual vendors there?
Our ag agent will provide direct support to any of them, yeah. Yeah. So John Little would be doing farm visits and other things like that, and education and training, yeah. Okay, a couple more. So when you're out volunteering, whether it's at a public event or anywhere else, our goal is to first have positive interactions, right? If I can't give you the right answer, like if I can't give you the answer to your question, if I can't do anything else like that, I at least want you to walk away being like, they seemed nice and like they kind of knew what they were talking about. I'll talk to them again, right? Like that's our first goal, okay? We want to be a trusted source of research-based information. So when you're out interacting with people, you're going to have two major types of interactions. People asking a question, like they actually have a question, and then people who are just excited to talk, sometimes about gardening. And that's normal. That's fine. They're going to wander up to you. They're just excited to chat, and that's completely fine. You'll be able to suss this out pretty quickly, which one you're dealing with. And if someone's just pumped to talk mostly about gardening, it's completely fine to be like, tell me about your garden. That sounds great, right? Just be like a normal, nice person in a conversation. And even if you don't hear a question, you can still say like, that's so cool. Like if anything ever comes up, reach out to us. Like we would love to help you ID that weird bug. We would love to help you figure out what to do with your azalea, right?
And is that a contact if you don't do education, if you just...
You'll probably share something educational with them, right? Like at the point where someone comes up and they just like really want to talk about their azalea, you could be like, that's so cool. Like it must be doing really well. Your soil must be really good for it, or something. Like try to work a fact in there somewhere, so you sound good. I'm just kind of warning you that you're gonna get this, okay? And you're gonna get a fair bit of it, right? A lot of us, as we all know, want to talk about our gardens, and our partners and family are tired of it. Like they see you and they're like, okay.
They especially don't like knowing suddenly you know a little more than them.
Yeah, right? You could be sharing about the Master Gardener program. Maybe that person is a Master Gardener waiting, right? And more than anything else, this is about, it's a term called unconditional positive regard, right? Wherever that person's coming from, whatever their situation is, whatever their context is, being excited about that, going with them on it, right? Even if they're going to try and propose something crazy, be like, that's really interesting. What we might propose, you know, but supporting people and trying to build positive relationships and meeting them where they are. So supporting clients in their goals, right? Organic versus conventional, right? So organic versus what some of us might think of as chemical approaches. Natives versus turf, whatever. If someone comes up and they're just like, I'm really excited about putting fertilizer on my turf, I'd be like, I'm not that pumped about that, but I'd be like, oh, really cool, like here's what something you can do, here's how you follow the label, here's what, because they might talk to us again, right? We might get them there. But if they don't have a good interaction, they're not coming back, right? And either way, we want to have those interactions, we want to be a trusted source of information. Make sure you're listening to the whole story and asking questions to confirm understanding as you're doing this. Sometimes if the answer doesn't make sense to you, I would ask again, maybe in a slightly different way. Sometimes I have to kind of politely ask a question multiple times to kind of either have them hear my question or have me hear their answer properly, right? This was covered in your job aids to some degree that you read for class. Don't worry, we have printouts. I know it was project week. Lean into your fellow master gardeners. You are not going to be volunteering by yourself. We don't do that to you. That would be mean and boring. Lean into your fellow master gardeners that you're working with. This is so important. And have fun, right? It's more obvious. It's obvious when you're having fun, like people want to talk to you, and like it's definitional, right? Then you're having fun. Okay, a couple of technicalities as you're out volunteering. Always come back to research-based information, right? Always come back to things you've learned in class, you've seen in the textbook, you've seen from extension sources. We all have gardening things that work for us that are written down nowhere or that our parent taught us. I know it, we all do. And those are interesting, but I would still try and center it back to research-based information, right? Especially when you're giving fertilizer or pesticide directions. It's the label, it's the recommended rate, right? Try not to recommend specific providers. We really shouldn't be doing that. Specific stores, specific products. Lowe's and Home Depot, for example, become big box stores, right? That's how we refer to those. The exception is when you have very hard to source items, right? Things that you just can't find everywhere. If you can only find it one place and you haven't been able to find it anywhere else, you can recommend that one place. Otherwise, you need to recommend 3 or more places. Okay? We just can't look like we're putting our thumb on the scale. If you have a client that's excited about a bad or questionable idea, which you will, right? All the time. Listen to them, hear them, think about what their goals actually are. Try to offer something that you know is research-based that would meet the same goal, right? But I would say keep trying to build that rapport, keep trying to work with them, and kind of be gently steering that conversation back to something you think would be a more research-based and appropriate solution. Yeah?
Kind of in that regard, if you do have somebody that comes in, they're like really excited about planting something that's invasive, would you just like...
I would say that, like, you know, that's one of those things where I'd say, like, I wouldn't recommend planting that. That is invasive. I think you can say that. You can say there's a lot of other, like, why do you want to plant that? What's it doing in your landscape that you're excited about, right? Is it a low ground cover that can tolerate anything? Cool, like, let's take a look at the plant toolbox and see some things that using the find a plant feature are going to do that same thing, right? Because it's not just about saying no, it's about saying, like, well, what was your actual underlying goal? And how do we get to that, right? Would be how I'd approach that.
In terms of the specific providers and all that and 3+ recommendations, what about, like, are we recommending stuff that's, like, outside of Durham County and stuff too? Because, like, with native plants, sometimes there's, like, I'm going to have to recommend something like Pittsburgh or something.
Yeah, you can. And you'll see, like, Debbie Ruse will give you a list of multiple people. Okay. Right? So as long as it's 3 or more providers, you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going back to the plant toolbox and talking to someone. So I'm assuming then that maybe you have an iPad or something at some of these events, and do you get on the plant toolbox and work with the client then?
Yeah, so you certainly can, or I mean, because we don't typically have an iPad, but if you were at a public event and you didn't have something like that, I would at least be guiding them through the thought process of, like, what is your actual underlying goal for that area. That's where I will show you, and we'll talk about this after the break. We have these cool bookmarks that have QR codes for the plant toolbox, for Durham gardening resources. We have seed packets. Like, we have all this swag you can give people on like how to contact us. And we tried to make it in a way that people would actually want to hold on to it.
Oh, that's good.
And so, you know, it's kind of about them guiding them through that thought process and transitioning to like, you can look that up or you can email us and we can get that information for you. Like, that's a great question. Like, how do we think about, you know, kind of pump them up on actually wanting to do more. Yeah.
Plus the help.
What?
The help thing on the toolbox, so that showed me how to download it to your phone.
Oh.
It's on the help.
Yeah,
that's true. I just know you can spend so much time on there, so
Yeah.
you could really,
with all those filters.
If someone is interested in something that's like, I guess I would say like non-native,
that's fine.
It's a basic question, but that's cool, right? Like you don't.
100%.
Yeah, okay. Cause like for my initial project, for example, like I have a lot of aggressive non-native weeds, right?
Yeah.
Which are like English ivy. If someone is like, I'm gonna plant a bunch of English ivy, like maybe that's the threshold where I'd be like, maybe don't.
Yeah.
Like if like someone's like, I love roses, and it's like, we're chilling with.
I'm chilling with I Love Roses. Like, I'm excited to carpet this entire place in English ivy and like ligustrum. I'd be like, what are your goals? You know? Yeah. So it's those really kind of really aggressive invasives where we kind of draw our line. But you want to keep having that conversation. And there are certainly a number of non-natives that I would plant and I would be very comfortable with. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And actually, I think the biggest message also that you're getting across, especially if they come up with something rather egregious, is to just not come across as arrogant or you are just wrong.
Yeah.
That's why getting these questions asked in a way that begins to steer as opposed to this attitude.
Yeah, a smile and seeming excited about their question gets you pretty far, right? Like, it's worth it. Okay, so we are going to learn about all the different committees on the last day at the committee fair, so that'll be really exciting. So May 1st, our last day, is really worth coming to because we'll have representatives of almost all of our committees. You'll get to talk to them. You will get to sign up for committees as you're interested, kind of cruise it. I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. We're running a tiny bit behind, so I'm going to say let's take just 2 or 3 minutes to stretch our legs, and then we're going to come back for our panel, and I will be around to answer questions all during break. Is that okay?